Welcome back to your newest obsession, the NeuroSpicy MomPod. I am your host, Austin Marie, and today we have such a powerful guest joining us. Bryan is a licensed trauma therapist who specializes in supporting neurodivergent kids, overwhelmed parents, and adults healing from trauma. Not only does she bring professional expertise into the room, but her own lived experiences with addiction and survival has shaped the way she shows up with deep compassion, honesty, and hope. You may know her from her TikTok, and that's actually how we have come across each other. We are mutuals on TikTok, and today we're going to dive into neurodivergence, trauma, parenting, resilience, and so much more. So let's get into it. All right. So for listeners meeting you for the first time, welcome, Bree. Can you share a little bit about yourself with our listeners?
Yeah. So, of course, I'm a trauma therapist by trade, but outside of that, I'm a single mom of two girls. They are my absolute world. And I'm pretty simple. I am someone I'm on the spectrum myself. I was diagnosed at 21, which changed my life forever. And I realized that that's why I loved very simple things in life. I have a very big passion for history. I love hiking. If I'm not in my office, I'm probably hiking on a trail somewhere in the middle of Ohio. Nothing better than a good chai latte and my cats. They're my favorite things in the entire world. I spend a lot of time reading and learning. I literally could go to school forever, and that is probably the biggest and nerdiest thing about me. If you can't see behind me, there's a lot of paper there, and I'm going to keep doing it because I love it.
I love that. While I was reading through your responses, I was like, yes, check, check. I wish we could go get chai together, but unfortunately we live on the opposite
Opposite
ends
sides.
of the country. So yeah, getting the right time and place, go us for being able to do the
Go us.
mathematical equations. But yeah, I'm also a single mom of two kiddos. And I think it's really interesting that you said that because of your diagnosis, you think that that is the reason for your love of simple things. Because I agree, there's no better place or time than when me and my kids are just like walking by the river, out on a trail somewhere, just out in nature. I feel like that's like, I don't want to be anywhere else. Like that is
Yeah.
truly peak happiness, peak joy. So I love that, to reframe it as like, yes, we experience the world in an intense way, but we also intensely love the simple things.
Oh, yeah, 100%. It's something I tell my clients a lot is the fact that they often feel weird by telling me they don't have hobbies, they don't have things they enjoy, and I'm like, "Think back to the simple things that you enjoy. Is it hiking? Is it going and staying at a coffee shop and reading a book?" Those are hobbies. Those are things that you enjoy, and they're simple, and that's because your brain is already overwhelmed. So, simple things is what gives us our neurodivergent brain dopamine.
Yeah. Yeah. And just there's nothing more regulating than being outside, touching grass, and like hearing the rhythmic patterns that nature just brings naturally to it. It's chef's kiss.
I
So,
agree.
what do you feel like originally drew you towards the therapy world? I know, was there like a specific aha moment, or do you feel like you said you were diagnosed a little bit later in life, such as myself? I was diagnosed like way, way later in life. I'm much older than you. But how do you feel like that has helped you unfold your journey to where you are now?
So there definitely was not a single aha moment for me. It was the fact that I was someone who I've been in a therapy office on and off since I was 5. I knew exactly how it felt to feel misunderstood, and I struggled a lot silently. I wanted to be the person that I didn't have growing up. I can genuinely say I had one therapist up until the age of like 13 that I actually enjoyed and had spent time with, and I only had her for 2 sessions. I walked into that office 20 years ago now, and that makes me feel really old to say, not gonna lie to you. At the ripe age of 26, I feel old. But essentially, I walked in there 20 years ago, did I think 3 sessions with her, and she made me feel safe, and I felt like it was a place where I could heal. I think it's important to mention too, I spent most of my childhood in fear, and that came from a place of being in foster care, unfortunately a victim of abuse for a very, very long time. And a lot of my abuse made everything else in my life have an explanation. So they didn't ever look deeper than just my trauma. And oftentimes the things that now I know are my ASD were really just my they were saying it was mood disorders or things like that. So I think really what drew me to going into therapy was being the person I didn't have growing up. I initially came into this thinking that I was just going to work with kids and I was just going to work with kids in the system. And although that is where my passion lies, I love helping kids that were labeled as troubled teens or things like that. I love helping anybody. I pour my heart out into my clients, and that's what drew me into it. I originally had started my career working in criminal justice of all things. I know a lot of people hear that and they're like, girl, what? But no, I literally completed the academy when I was 19 and I was like, yeah, I'm going to become a cop. And after working with a lot of these offenders, I just had an aha. Like if that had to be my aha moment, it was then. It was the fact that I didn't want to be on the side of justice. I wanted to be on the side of healing and finding the reason for why they got to where they are.
Mhm.
Really, it was the therapist I had that I was 13 that inspired me to be to where I am today because she was someone who stood by me in the justice system when everybody was telling me that I was just a 14-year-old, a 13-year-old, 14-year-old, same range there. I was there and I was facing 2 felonies. She was the only person who stood by me and made me feel like I was worth healing. I was worth that. Um, and so I kind of went towards that after I finished my criminal justice degree. And I went into pursuing a career in therapy. And that's something that I am so happy to have done because I get to be such a beautiful part of so many people's lives.
Oh, well, I just want to first thank you and hold space for sharing that with us and with me because that's obviously a vulnerable place to start. But I think that that's also such a powerful place to start and so important in understanding the meaning and like the why behind every movement. And lucky that I never experienced the foster system because learning about it through my psychology degree, learning it through it just as a teacher, we understand the deep, deep impact that it has on children. And so you're already coming into this world with just a completely different outlook on life because of our experiences. And although I had two parents that were together, I was also living in chronic fear. And so when your nervous system is from the get-go chronically on high alert, to then grow up and learn about regulation and what it means to to heal your nervous system and to pull yourself out of fight or flight. First of all, what a journey. It's still something that pushing 40, I still struggle to keep myself from, my brain is wired to be on high alert. Safety does not feel safe for me. And so because of that, of course, I did the psychology degree because I had to understand everything about why am I the way I am? Am I broken? Let me understand that. And it's so healing to really get to know your brain, to get to understand, to have labels for these things. And so my goal was to go into teaching so I could show kids like, hey, you can have a really bad childhood, but like you can take your life back. And I was abused too, and I'm here, and I love that I find people like yourself who took a life that was unkind and not fair. And from that, instead of looking at everyone as like, I hate everyone, I'm going to build walls, I'm not going to love, I'm going to protect myself, I'm going to get mine. Instead, you took that and you alchemized it into being like this powerful healer. And you come into therapy from that place. And I wish almost that I had more therapists like you because I couldn't relate to people who didn't know what it meant to grow up unsafe. And like, what a blessing you are in this space.
Well, thank you. I will honestly say though, like you said something about like I didn't take and I didn't think you said anger, but the hatred and the just the fear of everything. Unfortunately, I still do. And I will say it, and I stand by it. I think that a lot of the things that made me a difficult teenager make me a really, really good therapist because I go out of spite. I actually have a tattoo on my arm that says "Do what you can't." It's what I live by, and I show it to every kid that I work with because I was always told I couldn't. I was literally told by my guidance counselor in high school, my senior year. At that point, I turned my life around to a point, but I still had a stigma that surrounded me. And unfortunately, I was told, "You want to do what now? You want to go to university?" And before she would hang my acceptance letters up on the wall as like a proud thing that they did with everybody in our high school,
Mm-hmm.
she had to fact check mine because she couldn't believe a kid like me made it that far. So I've always been told I couldn't. And so a lot of times I'll tell my clients, look, if you're mad at the world, that is okay. Use it for a purpose. I am
Yeah.
still the same little juvenile delinquent that did a lot of bad things, bad things. But I'm someone who's taken that pain and given it a purpose. It's
Yes.
not just to hurt, it's to heal.
And you know what? Revenge and pettiness is great fuel. Like
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
all emotions are energy, and like it's just like, are you going to put it in a place where you're bettering? Because there is no better revenge than looking back down and being like, oh, I like what was that? You
What was
know,
that now? Yeah,
what was
no.
that you said? Ultimately, I had to step away from the education system because I was watching people classify these children as good and bad by the time they hit first grade. And it's like, what are we doing here, guys? What are we doing here? The way that we would look at behaviors as such surface level without asking any questions, without looking at this child who has an underdeveloped brain, who has their self concept is still being absorbed from what they're being told. And then we're telling them at like 5, 6, 7, you are a bad student. You have bad behaviors, but actually they're just hungry. Clearly they're not being taken care of, and you're getting mad at them for sleeping. Like, what is our education system? Broke my heart. And it went from me being the like, look, you can be whatever you want, I'm the model, to me then being like, I need to use what I know about psychology to wrap these babies up in a bubble of self-love and self-concept and understanding of their metacognition, so grown-ups do not come and tell them who they are. Because why do we do that to children? Why do we do
Yeah.
it's like, I love that we're now able to use our social medias. And although I'm coming at it through more of education, you're coming at it through a therapy, mental wellness, the message is the same. Like, you can heal your nervous system and you can be whatever you want to be. Like, do not listen to anyone else.
And you don't have to wait to heal to do those things. I think that's really important for everyone to remember that you can still be healing and still do wonderful things. Like I'm a therapist with a therapist. I love my
Yeah.
therapist. My therapist is the reason I'm here. Like he has changed my life in so many ways, but I'm still able to be a good therapist while receiving therapy because I'm still on my
Hmm.
healing journey. And really, I just wanted to say one more thing about what you said about kids too is I was someone who was labeled with reactive attachment disorder. And there's not a lot of knowledge about that, especially in the education field. And I can genuinely say I don't think I ever had a teacher that took the time to know me and
Yeah.
understand that my behavior, like every behavior us humans have, has a purpose. And so when they saw me come into these classrooms angry and frustrated, I was a straight A student, which is the craziest part of this whole thing. I was a kid who was labeled as gifted and all of these things. But because I had reactive attachment disorder, I was written off as a difficult child. So when they would assign my friends group activities, because I had that label, I was doing those activities by myself. And that was something that never sat right with me. So that's one of the reasons I, again, went into this is because I knew how it felt to be slapped with the diagnoses and it changes your entire life.
100%. And also, the way that the teachers are not educated on neurodiversity, on the nervous system at all, on cognitive functioning, like, felt a lot of shame that it took me 6, 7 years to graduate undergrad because I was going through processing my own trauma. But through that, I got to take a lot of these psychology, sociology. I just took so much information on what makes humans the way they are. And I really wish that as a society, that was just normal, that like even children grew up understanding that behavior is just communication. Because what is education if not connection? What were you doing but trying to make a connection? And like, we are human social beings. Like, we are evolved to make connections. And if we are not being in connection and community with our people around us, that tells our nervous system we are in a dire situation, and kids will get that attention any way they can, even if it's negative. And I think that the fact that we label that instead of embrace it with care is it's what is ripping us from each other. You know, the
Yes.
fact that you had that one therapist only for that short amount of time, but made it such a lasting impact that it's geared you towards your path because that person let you experience nervous system safety for the first time. And that's how vital it is for us as human beings to be in a homeostasis in our nervous system. What a beautiful place would it be if we were setting children up in their lives to know that they have the right to feel safe always.
Yep. I completely agree. All of that.
Oh, I'm so glad that you're on social media to be able to speak into a louder audience. We need to stop looking at behavior as good
Oh,
and bad. You said you were slapped with this diagnosis and then no support. The way that I would find these little girls and be like, you need to assess her just because she's a girl, it looks different. And then we got this diagnosis. Now, what supports do you have? And I had nothing to offer them. They know how to read. They're great at rote memory. Look at them write, but they struggle socially, and we don't have any kind of explicit instruction or modeling programs for neurodiverse girls who need it.
yeah.
And it
Yeah.
breaks my heart.
Oh, it does. And because girls are better at masking. I mean, most females end up being diagnosed very late on in life because they eventually have to end up fighting for themselves. Like, I have heard the most beautiful stories from some of my clients and people in my life that I've connected with because of the neurodiverse community that we now have. And they will connect with me because they're like, look, yeah, I did get diagnosed until I was 16 or 17. And it's like, because you fought for it at that point. But because we're so good at masking and hiding, and most oftentimes a lot of folks that are on the spectrum somewhere ended up experiencing some sort of trauma. And trauma doesn't have to look like some crazy thing that happened to you and was this earth-shattering event. It could have just been that something happened to you that changed the way you think. And that's what unfortunately happens 90% of the time with these kids.
Well, like I want to piggyback off what you said because trauma and neurodivergence, they do overlap in very complicated ways, right? So,
Yes.
how do you help your clients, kids, teens, or adults that you're working with begin to make sense of it? Because a lot of even my own listeners have asked, like, well, like, is it trauma or is it neurodivergence? So, what is your opinion about that?
So I have a big opinion on that. It's one that it's a soapbox. I first off want to say that before I did this, I worked in the community mental health field for 6 years ish. I want to say, like, I don't even know if that's a word, but ish, 6 ish years. And working in there, I saw a lot of kids get labeled diagnoses. And in all honesty, if you were to really just give them a diagnosis, it should be PTSD or whatever it is, because these kids were in such fear of the systems they were in. So with trauma and neurodivergency, what I would see a lot of times is they would look at these kids that had experienced trauma like they were a neurotypical child. And so they
Hmm.
would see their behaviors as a grand event when in reality, if you actually spent time with the kid, you'd realize these behaviors were always there. And so with
Hmm.
trauma and neurodivergency, it doesn't make a new behavior manifest. It makes behaviors worse and maybe shift in a way of their purpose. I take things really slow. And that's something I always give the parents the disclaimer of is like, look, for the first 2 or 3 sessions I have with your child, it may not look like what you think therapy looks like. It may look like where we're playing an Uno card game. I
Hmm.
crush kids at Uno on the daily. I warn that about them in their console. I will crush you in Uno, just so you know. That's one of the things I utilize because in that I get to have conversations with them. Because I don't want them coming to my office and feeling like, oh, this is just another person that's going to sit here and talk to me. I take things really, really slow.
Well, you
And
understand you
yeah,
have to make that
yeah,
relationship. It's
yeah.
all about
And
relationship.
I think too, I learned a lot of it from the first therapist I ever had, which I literally saw 3 times, and the therapist I had when I was 13. Both of them had something very similar in the sense that they made me feel safe slowly. They didn't try to push a relationship on me. And I think with neurodivergence and trauma, it's very easy to assume that because someone is traumatized, that they're going to be more open to feeling in like a safe space. But in reality, those are the kids that need the most work and the most time to develop that relationship with you. I really try to do a lot of education in this piece because a lot of these families that come in do not understand any of these diagnoses these kids get slapped on them. They
Mhm.
get a gut diagnoses, they get a medication management plan, and that's where it lies. So I would say probably a good 2 to 3 sessions after that are spent trying to understand that the behavior is a trauma response. That even though that behavior was there beforehand, the way that behavior is now manifesting and maybe why it got worse is because it's becoming a trauma response for them. And sometimes it's a sensory need. It can be both. It doesn't have to be one or the other. Um, and helping families and the kids themselves. I think it's really important to highlight here. I don't just talk to the families and like talk about the kid like they're in third person. I'm explaining to them that this bad behavior that you have, it serves a purpose. It's
Yes.
about changing the way that we view it, that it's the brain and the nervous system responding to the stimuli around them. And I highlight a lot of strengths. I will come in and I will build these kids up because you are never going to get anywhere in therapy if you are sitting in front of a kid talking about all their bad behaviors. So let's say, yeah, this kid may be labeled as violent in school, right? In reality, they're communicating. I'll be like, you're a great communicator. It's very weird. I've had people look at me like I'm crazy, and why I was mentioning the community mental health situation is the fact that I was often labeled like the bad kid whisperer. I wish I was joking. That was literally it. It was like the bad kid whisperer. And a lot of
Hmm.
people were like, well, why don't you own that? Like, that's an awesome thing. And it's like, because they're not bad kids.
Yes.
These
Yeah.
kids are
Words
misunderstood.
matter.
Yeah, words matter a lot.
Yeah.
Um, and so for me, I had to take a big step back and I realized that the reason I was good at it was because I understood it. I understood how it felt to walk into an office and have people that just saw my behaviors and they didn't see me.
Yeah.
So I see my kids for what they are, and they know from the moment they walk in my office to the moment that I discharge them in tears, by the way, if I may say, that I will always be in their corner, that I don't care what they do. I don't care what happens. Bree will always be here for you. And that is something I try to make pump into their heads. Like I get to see beautiful success stories after. Like, of course, we have a lot of things that prevent us from like holding on to kids. I will never, ever cross those things. But it is beautiful when a kid will find where I was working. Like I had a kid that I had worked with years ago reach out to me and he actually sent a letter and he was like, I got into college. And that was a huge thing.
That's so big.
Yeah,
And
that was huge.
And just to also, I think that it's so important and so beautiful to have kids know that there's fans out there. You have
Yeah.
people rooting for you. We do love you. And oh, that just brings me so much joy. Every child that you're creating that safe space with, I hope that they are as inspired by that feeling of safety. It almost feels like a superpower, right? Like you have this different way of looking at human beings in general. And instead of coming at it with judgment, instead you kind of see past the surface level behavior and how beautiful you're able to do that for your kids. Because we're going to get mad, we're going to lash out, we're going to do things that people don't like. And to be able to do that and then to be like, yeah, that makes sense. I understand your anger. Anger is sacred. It's telling us something. Every behavior, every emotion is communication. And I love that you're normalizing it and you're alchemizing it for them. That's a beautiful gift that you're giving. And I just want to acknowledge that for a
Well,
second.
thank
Like
you.
I love that you're getting to work with younger kids because I feel like I'm doing that work now as an adult, and how powerful could have, would have, should have I have been had I been in contact with a therapist who has the like background knowledge that you bring, like that kind of x-ray vision that you bring. I think that's really beautiful.
Well, and I think it's funny too because a lot of people, when they hear that I work with families, they're like, they look at me and they're like, "What? You do what now? You sign yourself up to be in the middle of chaos?" And it's like, yeah, I love chaos.
My
Um,
brain does really well with it,
yeah, it
actually.
does. It does really well, actually. And especially because that's really where I found my love for therapy again, because I really had never worked in a therapist modality, like this frame of work. I came from a child welfare background where I was essentially having to be a part of the system that rips families apart. And that never
Mhm.
sat right with me. So I took that, worked in family therapy, and I loved the fact that sometimes I would bring these families into a hurricane with me where we were digging up all the dirty, all the bad things, all the secrets, but I was able to help them through that hurricane and I was throwing water out the one window with them. Like I
Yeah.
was in there with them. And I realized very quickly that these families that are angry and mad and full of conflict are truly just terrified because as a parent, I know what this for myself. I'm raising a daughter that has ASD. I just want her to be safe. I'm not mad because maybe she doesn't have the best social cues. Like I say that I have the social cues of a cucumber, and my daughter is my twin in that. And with that, I just want them to feel safe. I want the families to understand that I want their kids. I want the same thing for their kids. I want them to feel safe. And sometimes when you say that to a family for the first time, you'll see the mom, especially moms. We cry a lot. Their eyes will well up with tears, and they're like, I'm not mad at them. I just want them to be good and I want them to be a good human and I want them to feel like they're a good human. Especially with adding in the neurodivergence aspect, a lot of these kids can't communicate the needs they have. And it's not that they're not nonverbal as a whole separate entity, but even kids that are verbal and they're
Mhm.
high functioning, they're not able to communicate it because their brains are going a mile a minute and it's way past the point of why they don't feel safe.
100%. It makes what you're doing is effective. You need to bring in the family. Neurodivergence and trauma in children, that's not something that you can just like, oh, it's gone, it's fixed now. It has to be an environmental change. You have to fix the environment to allow the nervous system to remain calm. Because you had kind of mentioned, I'm going to go on a little tangent, that, you drag them in the hurricane with you and you're pulling out the water. But I also feel like what you're really doing is you're ripping baseboards, getting the mold out. Because we cannot live in this house if there is
Yeah.
mold hiding in the walls. Like, yes, this is scary, but we have to rip this off. And if we get down to the studs, we are down to the studs, but then we're building with a healthy foundation. That is setting everyone up for success.
Oh, yeah.
I love that you are taking the care to give them like all around support.
Something I really have to like dig in with families a lot. And unfortunately, when I worked in a setting where some of these families didn't want me there, they didn't want a therapist coming to their home 3 times a week, which to be honest with you, me either, girlfriend, me either. I get it. They would be very resistant to the things that I would say to them. And of course, I had to basically come in and say, it's not your kid, it's their environment. It's things you're doing too. So it was really hard to get to a point in my own like professional career where I felt safe enough to say to parents, it's you too. And now it's a disclaimer I give to parents right off the bat. Like, look, I'm going to say things that are probably going to hurt your feelings because if it didn't hurt, it wouldn't be important. And I said, if
But
you want to go to a therapist that will tell you all the warm and fuzzy things that you're this fantastic parent, your child's just bad, go ahead. But your child's not going to make changes because you have to change too.
and what you're really saying to them is you're telling them, I'm going to be honest.
Yeah.
I
Honest with you.
I'm going to be honest over accommodating for your feelings because
Yeah.
that's
No.
how true healing happens. Like you have to look at the shadows.
Yeah.
You have to see how, I mean, generational trauma is real. It lives within our own DNA. And, I know, even though I am hyper fixated on neuroscience, how I know that even though my love is in psychology and, using my words in very particular ways so that my children are having their brain develop in the healthy way, I'm still causing them trauma. I'm still a single mom who is a neurodivergent person who has extreme sensory issues. I get dysregulated. It's something I still struggle with maintaining all the time. I'm already bracing myself to be able to accept and absorb when they come to me saying like, you did this to me. And you have to take it on we're
You have to take it
humans.
on. Yeah.
You have to take it on. Otherwise, like, how can we be in relationship if someone isn't going to admit and acknowledge, like, yeah, I fucked up. Like, I
And
messed
I
up
even have to do
there.
that with my clients is like I have to be real with them, especially for my clients that I was coming into a court order. I was coming into a situation where they had to receive me or their kid was going to get sent away. I was a part of the trauma. Me knocking on that door was a
Yeah.
part of that trauma for that family. And it was really hard for a lot of these families to get past that. So I tried to do everything I could to validate that trauma, but also do as much as I could to provide a safe environment for the healing to happen, even though I was causing some of it. And same thing, like single mom myself, I will stand by the fact that I know my daughters are going to come to me one day and say that, Mom, we hate the fact we grew up in two homes. They say it to me now. My daughter doesn't have any sort of filter on her, so she'll say everything she thinks. But the thing I'll say is, I'm sorry this happened, but sometimes trauma happens so other trauma doesn't have to. I
Oh,
know
I
it sounds
love
really
that.
goofy,
No,
but
I love
for
that. I'm
I've
going to
used
steal that.
that. Good,
I'm going to
use it,
steal
yeah.
that.
Yeah, and my daughter, she uses that in her own therapy. She'll say, "Sometimes you have to pick the, like, one trauma over the other so that you don't have to live in that trauma forever."
I love that. Well, and I want to piggyback off a little bit something and get your feel from it because as a teacher, I'm what's it called when you have to report, mandated reporter. And like you said, you have to acknowledge that you're part of that trauma. I want to talk to you about something because something that was really difficult is like knowing, okay, I'm a mandated reporter. I'm like obligated. I have to do this. But then grappling with the fact that like, okay, so what? Now they're going to get she's going to get torn apart from her family. Who knows if their siblings can stay together? Like being the way that it, like you said, didn't sit right to know that like, and I had to leave because I was like, I am fully invested in this the school to prison pipeline. Maybe I'm helping a couple families here and there, but like overall, I felt like I was a part of it and I couldn't grapple with that. So how do you grapple with, like you said, being kind of part of the system that is so broken, but then you're doing it because it's the right thing to do, like how do you go about that? Because that's something that I still kind of struggle with.
So the biggest thing I will say is I give that disclaimer. I don't give it nearly as much now working in private practice, but working in community mental health, I had to give the disclaimer a lot that I care more about your child's safety than your feelings or my relationship with you, in the sense that I know it's going to hurt our relationship, but I also know that if I put your child in an unsafe environment or continue to feed into a negative environment, that's going to do no good for them. And I do want to just mention too, working in child welfare directly, I was an investigative caseworker. It's what I did. I was the
Hmm.
one showing up at these people's houses 95% of the time. And doing that, I knew at that point that that was not my forever career because I hated it. I hated the fact that I was going out to reports that didn't make sense. But I hated even more that I was going out to reports where people did it in really good faith. And I saw the relationships that got torn apart because of it.
Yeah.
So navigating it is really tricky. It's a case by case, and that's why I try to develop a relationship with my clients very quickly. It's why I take things with the few sessions I have in the beginning where it's a lot of warm and fuzzy
Building.
moments, if you will.
Yeah. Yeah.
Some of my teenagers think I'm like the cheesiest person in the world, which I am. I know I am.
Your
But
name
building
is
that
great.
relationship, my name I literally am the cheese. But having to have that relationship and that honesty with it, and realizing that you are a part of it, but doing everything you can to support it. Especially since you're a teacher, you know the experiences. I will generally say enough teachers in my life had called, never thinking another word of it. It's also important what you include in the reporting.
Hmm.
It's important to mention the things that are important, but there are things that these teachers would mention that was no abuse or neglect that they mentioned because they were just pouring everything out that I told them. And so again, like it's the verbiage you use, it's the language you
Hmm.
use, and also understanding that a lot of these agencies are predatory, and really being clear and reviewing why you are calling and why you are reporting these things is such a fundamental, because I think a lot of people are
Yeah.
very like scared. They're not doing it because they care about the kids. They're doing it because they're worried about their own careers. And in all honesty, it's why I would double check with people before I ever made a call. Like, do I really need to do this, or is this thing I can do a safety plan for? But
Yeah. It really felt like such a heavy decision to make
it
because
is, yeah.
you are potentially breaking apart a family. And yes, if you are doing it because you're like, this sits unwell and you are looking at all the patterns and you're like, this there's too many red flags, like I am mandated, I need to make this report, like it, but you do have to go into it with so much care. What a process to have to be a part. I can't imagine that is sounds really stressful.
Yeah, it was. Unfortunately, it's something that I thought I could fix from the inside out. I thought that because I was a foster kid, I would be going in
Hmm.
here and helping things. Unfortunately, because I was someone who always said yes, I ended up in a lot of committees that I didn't align with. I was sitting in on these fatality meetings and being a part of these awful situations that happen to kids. And I realized I'm not making any change here because I'm never getting to the point where I'm supporting the families. I am becoming the person that they're hating
Hmm.
because I'm the one taking their kids away when sometimes it's not even my choice to.
Yeah.
At that point, I was 20 years old. I'm sorry, but I wouldn't listen to a 20-year-old come to my house and take my kids from me. Like, no, goodbye, sayonara, see you later. So,
You do work with a lot of teens now as well, right? What is something that you do feel gets often misunderstood by schools or even families?
so behavior is one that I know sounds very vague, but it's in the sense that a lot of the teenagers I see are not kids who are maybe in an ASD classroom or getting emotional services. They are the high functioning ones. A lot of teens mask really well to the point where, like,
Yes,
yes,
justice for the high masking, high
yes,
low support
yes.
kids.
And sometimes I'll have those moments with them in my office where I'll hear them talk about something and I'm like, "So, you ever heard of neurodivergency? Like, you ever heard of that one?" And it's the fact that they're exhausted, they're
Mhm.
hurting. And the families and the schools, they sometimes miss it because they're like, "Oh, my kid gets all A's, like, they're in soccer. Like, my kid's a quarterback." Like, okay, your kid also has a deep-rooted interest in trains that he gets bullied for, and he can't like, I know that's, like, the typical ASD, like, stigma, whatever, but it's the fact that, like,
He can't focus if the
he
sock
can't
seams are
focus.
wrong.
Yeah, yes,
Like
exactly, exactly. And it's funny because I say that to I've literally used that exact example to people before. I'm like, "Well, aren't you just, like, contributing to the stigma?" I said, "No, because I've literally seen it where a kid has a big special interest, and it could be trains, it could be, you know, the moon, I don't know,
sports
space,
even.
sports,
Sports, which is
sports."
like, oh, that's just he
It's
just
just a
really
cool
likes
thing.
sports. He
Yeah,
knows every single score that's ever happened.
yeah.
Like
And it's almost like if you put a label on it, again, that's when the problems come up. So these parents will just avoid that label. I know for me, I was labeled with ODD, oppositional defiance disorder, and I see a lot of kids labeled with it. I don't see it nearly as much now, but in the community mental health setting, I saw ODD all the time.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, the reason I don't get to see them in this setting is because oftentimes these kids are labeled that they need a higher level of care than what I can provide in an outpatient setting doing this. So it's really hard with that because I wish they would come to me. I'm like, give me your difficult teens.
Yeah.
But I know for me, I was labeled with ODD because my emotions and the things that I struggled with were seen as issues. They were not seen as a talking point.
Yeah.
Um, it stopped me from opening up, and they just saw the symptom. And I think for a lot of teens, what's misunderstood is the fact their symptoms and their behavior are seen as who they are and not these beautiful individuals. I love working with teens. And again, another thing I'll say to people, and they like look at me and they're like, okay, alrighty then. When I was in my grad program, I remember one of my professors was like, "Oh yeah, what population do you guys like working with?" Everyone was like, "Oh, clinical, like hospital social work, like little kids." And I was like, "I like working with teenagers, specifically ones that at least have one thing on their record." And like, I saw the entire Zoom class kind of like turn their heads, and I was like, "I do." Because those are the kids that I get the most beautiful insight from. Like I said
Yes.
before, once a child leaves my treatment, I typically don't know where they end up. I don't know. There's things in place. And again, those boundaries are put into place because this is such a sacred healing thing that you don't want to ever make a child feel like there's not boundaries. So
Yeah.
boundaries are big things with teens too. But because teens are teens and they're like the little FBI, like I said, that kid that found my work address from the agency, he had found that and he sent me a letter right off the bat, being like, I got into college. And I was like,
So
yeah,
amazing.
you go.
That that is
Um,
so amazing.
and they're able to give the insight. And I mean, in
Yeah.
that letter, it was talking about the insight that he had. And it was the fact that if you were to tell anybody else in that kid or anybody else's life that has a similar background, you would have never thought that he would be sending a cheesy letter to the therapist he originally hated. So I think it's
Well, that's
important that
it.
they have a lot of insight.
Yeah, but it's because you took the time to get underneath those initial behaviors or
Yeah.
emotions. And like you said, like people hear that initial label of a diagnosis or a neurodivergence and they're like, I don't want it. Well, it's like, well, people are putting labels on your kid anyways. And the difference is you can either give them the information of like, hey, this is what it's called and this is what it can look like and feel like, and that's just what it is. Or you can make them think that it's them and that it's their own or what? Ooh, what else?
Or social media is a big part of it too.
Yeah.
It's a whole
Especially
soapbox.
for especially for teens. I guess I'm not there yet. I get to block my kid off for like
Yeah.
a little bit more.
No.
And so like I'm trying to pad him
Yeah.
with
Like you
information.
don't need this. Yeah. You don't need that.
Well,
Uh,
and also like, okay, so like we are neurodivergent. None of his teachers would think so. He's a great student. What do you mean he's neurodivergent? He doesn't look neurodivergent. But as soon as he comes home, we're having nervous system meltdowns. And I can't remember the name of it, what that's called. But I have told him, like, yeah, of course you are. Like, that you have been working extra hard to hold all your energy, all your verbal stems inside. You're working double. Like,
he's dysregulated.
he's
Yeah.
so
He gets home and he
dysregulated.
gets dysregulated, and that's completely valid. And it's
And
something that's so normal.
he can't hold it in anymore. And it's like, yeah, melt down. And at first it was like, why is this? Like, I'm so weird. I'm so sorry. And now he knows, like, I'm just so exhausted, mom. This new teacher doesn't let him stem and won't allow fidgets into the room or anything. So he's really having meltdowns at home. And I just love hearing him now understand what's happening. Because this is the first year he hasn't been able to get out his excess energy in the classroom.
Yeah.
And it's like that is why it's important to teach your kids what's happening in your brain. It goes from like, what's wrong with me? I'm just crying. Like to like, I'm exhausted from holding in all of my stems, and it just being that, like, yeah, do you want to go cuddle in my bed, or you want to,
You
like,
want to
what do
just
you
go
want
like
to
run
do?
around in the front yard? That's fine too. Like I don't care. And it's the fact that these kids are going to find an answer no matter what. Especially now that I'm on social media, like,
Mm-hmm.
giving some of this information. I definitely see kids that are like liking my posts. I'm like,
Hi. You're
hi,
like,
hello, what's up?
I see
Yeah, I see
you.
you over there. But I know even for my kids that I had as clients, and I'm sure some of them still do, they probably don't tell me because now they're like, my therapist is on TikTok. This is lame. But like, I have had kids that'll be like, yeah, no, I saw this on TikTok. And then they'll send me the video or like I can't tell you how many emails I would get from HR being like, "Your child emailed you a TikTok and we saw it." And I'm like, "Yeah." And they emailed it
It's
to my work email because they wanted to show it to me. So
Yeah,
what are
well,
we saying?
I fully credit TikTok to saving my life. It taught me about the names that I was experiencing to understand the unhealthy relationship I was in. And then that path led to being like, oh shit, I'm super neurodivergent. Like, oh my God, it's not just that I have trauma, it's all these other things too. So, like, social media, yes, like we have to be careful with it, but also not everyone can go to college and get a psychology degree. Not everyone is interested in going into psychology. But if you can get these little, hey, do you know what RSD is? Hey, do you know? And just in a 3-minute video, explain something and give words to people, that's healing too. That's important work
Oh,
too.
yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. And I mean, not even just the psychology degree or college, but some of these people will never even enter a therapist office, especially kids. They will never
Yeah.
enter a therapist office because unfortunately there's a stigma behind it, even for adults. Like, you calling to make a therapy intake is probably equally as traumatizing as even considering yourself neurodivergent. So I think that's a big part of this too, is it's opening that door where I am not providing therapy sessions on TikTok. Not doing that. Put
Mm-mm.
that in my disclaimer. Like, nope, not
Yeah.
me, not me.
Not your therapist.
No, not your therapist. I could be though, but I'm not. I'm not right now. I am just a funny little girl on TikTok. And I think that's a really important thing too, is just being able to put information out there.
Yes. Well, a lot of people who are listening are feeling super overwhelmed. So, what would be one simple starting point that you would encourage anyone who feels like they're barely holding it together, especially right now?
Yeah, we are in a different world and it's a scary world. It's gonna sound really cheesy, but I tell this to everybody, and it's something I've literally said in a TikTok before, is that you are doing much better than you ever thought you were. You're already doing the thing by even considering that you feel overwhelmed, because identifying you're overwhelmed is the first step. And secondly, I have an open door thing. I don't care where you are. I don't care what you're doing. Find someone safe, even if it's not me, even if it's not like this podcast host who's absolutely wonderful. Find someone that you can reach out to for resources. If you call any of the emergency hotline resources, I know they vary by state. Find help in a way that works for you. And it doesn't mean I'm telling you to go get a therapist, but if it's calling a hotline, if it's watching podcasts and watching like little clips on TikTok that help you, start there. And then it'll
Yeah.
open your brain up to more. And just understanding that the world that you are in was not built for you, and that you have to try to find a way to make the world work for you, and you need someone to help you give you the tools to do so, because you can't do it
Yeah.
on your own.
But it's possible.
It is possible,
You're
100%.
letting everyone know that, like, this is possible. You might not be able to, control what you're born into, but, like, we do have neuroplasticity. We can, and it's funny because it's like your work is almost detective work, because it's, once you kind of heal this, then all of a sudden, like, oh, here this pops up and it's like, oh, you get your ADHD under control, and then all of a sudden your autism's like, what's up? I've been
Well, and
back here this whole time.
it's even more so that, like, that feeling of overwhelming likeness and failure. I hear so many neurodivergent adults specifically talk about that they're just burnt out. They feel like they're not doing what they need to be doing. And then I'll ask a question and then it unlocks all these things that is the real reason they're feeling overwhelmed. It's not because the laundry's piling up and maybe they aren't in the job where they wanted to be. It's because of the fact that maybe back when they were a kid, there was no one there telling them they were proud of them. And that's where it all connects back to trauma, is that a lot of people think that you have to have some crazy story to be a trauma survivor, but truthfully, trauma looks much different than what you typically think. And so if you're someone that has been through any sort of experience that has changed your thinking or changed who you are, you have probably gone through something that would be considered trauma for you.
Okay, I'm going to get a little weird here, but I wonder, I'm just being a weirdo right now. I wonder because, okay, so for example, I experience like big trauma, big
Mhm.
T trauma, where it's easy to look at that and be like, that's a traumatic event, but whereas a lot of people who I have come across into my day to day life who were like
Yeah.
the most
Oh, yeah.
like fucked up of people, like just like the most like insidious of people, came from a culture where maybe there wasn't a capital T trauma where they would look at me and like with pity and like, oh God, that's so sad. But I would look at them and be like, oh my God, like you guys are all so traumatized, but they didn't have big T trauma. So they don't feel like they have anything to work on. And it's like, I almost feel like, no, bro, like you also need therapy. Like you don't need to be hit. You don't need to be like experiencing these big life traumas to have experienced something to have just disconnected you from yourself or humanity in a way that like makes you like a really awful person.
No, and it's funny that you mentioned that because this is like breaking the fourth wall for me almost. It's the fact that I realize that because I have such big traumas, like people see my big traumas, and a lot of these people that have no trauma, they are perfect human beings. They'll come into my life and be like, "We can fix you," and I'm like, "No, no, no, you're gonna stay right over there. Stay right over there." As a single mom, we date, we do the things, all those things, whatever. And it's the fact that a lot of these people will prey on someone who has the big T's, when in reality, their little T's are things that they're never going to overcome in the mindset they're in, when where mine are like not. Like I will never forget the day that a therapist sat me down in their office and I made her cry. I want to just give that disclaimer. She cried and quit within my session. Yeah, just she cried and quit because she started off the session by saying, "Well, I see your dad left before you were born." And I said, "Yeah, I don't think this is going to work because if you're going to assess me based off the fact that you think I have daddy issues for that, we're not gonna work together. And also, maybe you should go back to fucking school." I was 12 and said that. That was what was it? Found out that I was her first client ever. And secondly, I was not she was not supposed to be my therapist. She had basically taken me to someone called off sick. And so literally she starts packing up her office as I'm
She's like, fuck this shit. I'm out of here. I'm a sub. Like they're not
this is
paying
not
me
me.
enough for this.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
like you're just like, sorry, be tougher.
Mm.
Like be better.
No, be better. Be better.
Be better.
Yeah. Be better at your job.
I
Come on.
love, yeah. I hope if anything, people who are looking at their life and they're like, but look on paper, I have the marriage, check. I have the beautiful house, check. I have the family, check. You are still unwell. You can still be unwell and you can still be passing generational trauma down to your children. Like just please look inside. Look inward, please.
And everybody can use therapy. I genuinely say that everybody could go to therapy and find something. Even if you think you are like someone who deals with anxiety well, depression well, there is something so amazing about going to someone and just them being a third party because like they will clock you. Like whenever I went to my therapist, I thought I was just like going to talk about my day-to-day stuff. And then he connected a lot of my day-to-day stuff back to my traumas because at that point I had been through trauma therapy so many times and I was exhausted by it. So I said, I don't want that. I just want to go to therapy. I want to talk to a man. I want to talk to him about my things. And I realized that even though I was talking to him about things that I thought I was healed from, they were still connecting back because trauma never leaves you. You may survive it and you may heal from it, but it's still something that roots you in who you are. And you
Yeah.
can use that and go so far with it.
The way that we have put therapy inside a box, like let's expand what we think of as therapy because oh my God, I love talk therapy. I process things verbally. So I'm not actually really doing any of the healing work in therapy because I'm actually just processing it out loud with someone else. But I also need to utilize somatic therapy to get it out of my body. I need to be outside to actually like I believe in healing your vibrations and things like that and connecting with nature. So like there's so many different modalities of what therapy is and it's almost like you get to go to a salad bar and pick what works for you so that you can ultimately become connected to self. And it's like, even if you don't think you have big trauma, like we live in a nation that is inherently traumatic. We live
No.
in we are all very disconnected from ourselves and our bodies. And so like we all would be, look at how violent our nation is. Like we could all come together and just like recognize like, holy shit, we lost the plot.
Again, tying back to internet, social media, the things that we don't realize, like I therapize myself all the time because I'll be like, girl, why are you anxious? Like yesterday, I had sessions that went wonderful, beautiful connections were made, whatever. And then I opened up my phone to find a link, opened up the link, didn't think anything of it. It was sent from a friend that I trust. And I was watching the unfortunate incident that happened yesterday, clip by clip. And I didn't even realize that it affected me until I got home and I was this dysregulated mess. And I was like, man, did I just have a hard day at work? And then I'm like, girl, be so for real. Like you just watched a man.
Yeah, we're not
assaulted.
recognizing like and also like I saw it before understanding what I was seeing. And then I was like, Oh,
Yeah.
I didn't really want to
I didn't
see
wanna see
that.
that.
I
Yeah.
didn't like now that I mean, these 2 years have radicalized me and changed my neurochemistry, and I will never be the same because of the
No.
images and the relationships that I have built with people who are living in Gaza right now. Like I am broken, but like it still is going to affect us on a basic way to see violence happen in a cat and then to flip away from that and it be like, buy this. Like, oh my
Yeah.
God, do you
"Oh,
see
TikTok shop. Do you see this, nice hair
this
extension?"
is not normal. And so
No.
like all need and I told my therapist like just last week, I'm like, am I unhealed or is this a natural response to
No, natural
living
response.
right now?
No.
Like
Yeah, it's
how
true.
can you not be anxious?
And I would be dumb not to say this right now. So first off, I just wanna say I'm a big history nerd. Like I said, I could go to education and go through education and go to school
That's
for the rest of
another
my
thing.
life.
I like why can't that be a job?
No, literally.
I
I
will
will be a
rate all
professional
your
student.
classes. Are you a
Yep.
good professor? Let me take
Let
your
me tell
class.
you.
I'll tell
Oh,
you.
listen, rate
I
my
would love
professor
that.
hated to see me coming and hated to see me coming because I would, like, do it. I was giving every survey, I was doing all the things. I wasn't just giving, like, the check boxes, I was, like, doing the things at the
I was
bottom,
such a
but
people pleaser. I was like, 5 stars. You did your
no,
best, and I would
no,
I'm
no.
such a
My
people
discussion
pleaser.
boards in grad school, no, sir, But with that being said, I did 2 master's degrees. I did one in history, specifically war history, because I have a lot
Oh,
of interest in it. I know, but
you should do little TikTok snippets about
oh,
that.
trust me, I plan on it. I plan on it.
Yay.
I'm afraid to. Honestly, the whole thing, and it kind of connects back to what I was going to. It's the fact that I wasn't even sure if I was going to hang that degree up when I got it because I'm waiting for that paper in the mail because it was very expensive, and
Proud.
we're coming out of grad school, okay?
Yeah, yeah.
So I'm waiting to get that one, but I was just deciding on whether I wanted to hang it up or not because inherently, social work is political. People hate when I say that.
No, it is.
I made a TikTok about it, and I had
I
so many
love
people
that. Yes.
slander me, saying that I was like this, like, "Oh, how are you gonna come in and support people that have different views?" And it's not about the views; it's about the fact that I'm going to sit here and I'm going to advocate for the things that matter to me, but also I'm educated. So if you're going to come in here and be like, "Oh, you're just some young girl that doesn't understand the world," no, I do. I have a master's degree in it,
You're
sis. Like,
like,
right up there.
I'm sorry, what was
Uh,
that?
what was that again? So it's important for people to understand too, finding a space that is actually supportive of you. I joke that my psychology today is just ally, 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 ally. Like I'm allied to everything. I support everyone in my life and I support every client that comes in my door. And unfortunately, if you are someone seeking out a therapist, you need to be very mindful of that because that your therapist will not talk about the state of the world, will not talk about the things that are happening with you. If you try to bring that up to them because it stresses you out and they're just like shutting you down, it's like, okay, that is something that's stressing me out. We need to talk about it and we need to process it because that is trauma in itself. The fact that
Yeah.
children are opening up social media and seeing horrible incidents occur and they're just supposed to move on and it's
Well,
changed the way that we affect it.
and then what message are we sending that we can't talk about what's happening because it's not polite?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh,
What?
yeah. Yeah. No.
The way that my co-parent come like, "You need to not be talking about this in front of them," and I'm just like, "They live here too. They're in this world right now, and
They're in here with me.
this is happening, and of course, I am going to give them a moral framework to view what's happening, or else what?" I told this actually to my mom. She's very kind about letting me confront the trauma that I experienced, and I was just like, "It's wild to me that your response to being a parent was, I don't want to stress them out. This is stressful. So I'm just not going to talk about it. I'm not going to teach them." I'm like, it's wild that as an adult, your response was like, I'm not going to teach this child because it's stressful.
And it's not
How?
polite to talk about.
Yeah. Like, okay, then I guess I'll just learn all of the hard ways.
Well, and I
Like,
think it's important for people to understand that when someone says that social work, counseling, whatever, it's a political situation. It's not the fact that if you bring your child into me, I'm going to sit down here and be like, listen, Linda, you voted for this person or you want to vote for this person, I'm not going to work with you. It doesn't
told
even come
ya.
up.
Like,
Yeah, I
told you
told you.
so.
um, but it's the fact that if your child brings up to me that the fact that they can't even go to school without having a panic attack, that they can't even go to a friend's house without being worried that their parent may have a view that affects them, like those are the things we're going to work on, not the fact that I'm going to sit here and preach my agenda onto them because truthfully, I don't have one. I have the fact that I care about the people that I serve and I care about the community that I'm in. And I'm very loud about that. As a mom, my daughters are going to protest with me. They're putting signs up and like yelling their opinions. And it's not because I've formulated that on them. That's because they are so fearful and they want to get it out there. And I hope that that generation changes things because honestly, my 4-year-old and her feral self could probably make some life changing discoveries for people.
Oh, you can't tell my 5-year-old anything. I mean,
Oh,
I put him into he started kindergarten, and I'm walking into this being like, I might fully there might be a time where they are telling me that he needs to be put in the emotionally disturbed class, and I am going to pull him out immediately because just because my child is neurodivergent, highly intelligent and highly verbal, but just is not able to be swayed to do what you want because you want them to do it because you're the grown up. Like, sorry, I'm not gonna like take that away from him. Like, he's
no.
allowed to say no. He's allowed to like have his own opinions about things. And that doesn't make him, I mean, I don't care that my kid's non-compliant. Why would you want your child to be a compliant person?
You mentioned that I wanted to highlight so bad, and I hope I'm not eating up more of your time because
No,
truthfully,
I
I'm
actually,
just so excited.
this is my day. I'm like, how much time can I squeeze from you?
I love that. My daughter, again, she's 7 years old and she's diagnosed with ASD now. She has an IEP. And as a parent, I was terrified going into my first IEP meeting because truthfully, I didn't know what they could put in an IEP. She had a teacher's aide, not the teacher herself, who said that no fidgets in the classroom. My daughter needs a fidget. Like she needs a fidget like I need
I,
like my emotional support water
I
bottle.
literally have a fidget right here.
Yep.
Like, I
Yep.
need a fidget. I'm
No,
an
yeah.
adult.
Yes, and so I made them put that in her IEP, like, and my daughter came with me to her IEP meeting so she could understand what it meant. What did that mean? And
I
so when
love
we
that
got
you did that. I
yeah,
love
because
that you
honestly,
included
I
her.
think a lot of people think that that's a scary thing for kids to learn. It's like, no, it's about them because she was able to give them feedback. Like, they were like, "Well, does she need extra time on tests?" She was like, "No, that's cheating." And I was like, "No, it's not cheating. It's
It's
accessibility for certain
accommodation.
kids."
Yeah.
Yeah. And so it was just funny to me to see the things that she was like emotionally triggered by.
Yeah.
So, it was life-changing to see that, but more importantly, we got home and she was like, "Well, when are they gonna get that back to us?" I said, "I don't know, probably in a few days." And then she said, "Okay, well, I want to get a copy of it." And I said, "Of course, you can carry a copy of it with you whenever you want." She got a
Yes.
copy
Yeah.
of it. She highlighted the things that she felt like were important. Was the highlighting job good? No, and it made me very anxious. But then she took it one step further and literally got paper clips for each section, paper clipped them.
After my own heart.
Yes.
Yes.
And so when she has a sub, she'll go up to the sub and say, "Hey, I have an IEP. It's gonna be a problem." She'll literally say, "Is this gonna be a problem?" I'm like, "Ella, we can use better words. Use better words."
I mean, do we need to teach her that, or is she doing
But
exactly
she's
what she
doing
should
it.
be doing?
No, exactly.
She's doing it, man.
She's
She's my
compliant,
idol.
but she's sassy. So with that, like I think it's very important for people to understand that if you have a child with any sort of needs that need to be met, whether it's a diagnosis or you know your child needs certain things, don't be afraid to advocate for them and be labeled as like a difficult parent because I'd much rather be a difficult parent and know and have my child know that she is loved and she's cared for.
And I
And it's
have
so
your
funny.
back. I
It's
have
so
your back.
funny to me that like the teachers send these about me like sheets home the first week of school. We just got done with our first month of school and I feel like it's been 3 at this point. So they were sending those home and the one thing was like, "What do you feel like is so important for you or important for me to understand that you want for your child?" I said, "My child needs to feel supported and loved and heard." And
Mhm.
because she has a label on her, sometimes people will hear her label before they'll ever see my daughter. And she may have ASD. She may have some traits about her that a lot of people find irritating. She talks incessantly. Me too, girl. Me too. But she's a
She will make money off of that one day.
yes, she will. She will. But she also is someone who's a friend to all. And the teacher ended up writing me a letter or a note back in like class dojo and was like, "That's probably the most like basic answer I've ever gotten from a parent on one of these things, but it's so powerful." I said, "Because it's true. I don't care if my kid is difficult. I don't care if you have to put my child in the corner for like, if she does something really bad, but I care that my child knows that she's cared about and supported." And he's done exactly that. I commend this guy. He's fantastic. So be like that. People need to be like that and not just send home a thing expecting someone to be like, "Well, my kid talks a lot, so if you could tell them to like shut up," like, no, no, that's not what we want.
No, no, not at all. If you take anything away from this session, understand that like there is no one else who is going to advocate for you or your children. Like
Yeah.
your doctor is not there to tell you like what you should be doing. They're just going to give you medicine when you're sick. Like you have to know how to keep your body healthy. In the same way, like your teachers are not going to tell you what to do that is best developmentally for your children. You have to be the advocate for your child in every single classroom so that your child's needs are being met, because these teachers are met with, 20 different kids every single year. These doctors have so many patients. Like, it is our job as people and as parents to advocate for and also to know what our needs are. And like, that's also why therapy is so important, because I go to therapy so that I can understand what I'm feeling in real time, because I don't know that yet. Like,
Yeah.
we have to know what our needs are so we can teach our kids to how to know what their needs are, so that we are all regulated humans, and then we can live in a really beautiful world.
Yeah, and that's like I think anybody could benefit from therapy. I feel like it's a thing where people think if they don't fit this box, therapy won't benefit them. And it's why, like, especially when I was like going through my recovery and my addiction, I didn't fit into most of the boxes that these people wanted me to fit in to get those services. And unfortunately, when I became an adult, I saw like glimpses of my past coming back to haunt me because I never got the supportive services I needed because I didn't fit a certain box. So instead, now I'm like, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna do it and we're going to go. And I don't care if you're not going to treat me, I'll find someone that will. And luckily enough, I was able to do that. But you are your biggest advocate. Even if you don't fit in a certain box, find someone that will help you make your own.
Yeah.
That's the key.
Yeah. I love that. Well, I know that you're in between clients, so I don't want to take too much of your
No, you're
time,
fine.
but
You're a
before we head out, I just want to make sure that anyone who's listening, how can listeners connect with you? And if they'd like to learn more about your work or even work with you, how can they get a hold of you?
So first off, I will just give a disclaimer. I am on social media. I'm on TikTok as Bree the Therapist. Very simple. There's that. It's a great way, even if you're someone that is not in the state of Ohio, to have at least some sort of connection with me. Again, if you're someone that needs resources or finding a therapist, DM me. I will help you find someone within your state that is within the trauma scope. But if you're in the state of Ohio, or if if you want a new therapist, hey, still am accepting new clients as of now. I work with teens, adults, families. I work out of Youngstown, Ohio, which I know a lot of people hear Youngstown, they go, I'm like, listen, I love it here. I love Youngstown. And I also work all across the board online in the state of Ohio. I do telehealth. I work for a beautiful company. It's ran by my boss, Kara. She has created such a beautiful place here in terms of trauma and trauma survivors, helping other trauma survivors heal. It's called the Trauma Therapy Company. Very catchy,
Okay.
very cute.
Love
If
it.
you are someone looking for services, traumatherapycompany.com is our website. You can literally not have to speak to a single soul for your intake process. You just do the intake paperwork online. Our office manager, her name is Carrie. She's absolutely fantastic. We love Carrie. She will call you. She will do anything if something's not there, but it is an online portal that you can literally sign up, get into session, and get a consult basically right away.
Easy
Um,
peasy.
yeah, super easy. And especially because I know a lot of people have anxiety about phone calls, but at the same
Mhm.
point, like, we are all here. We are all trauma informed. Again, Kara, my boss, I would literally sing her praises for the rest of my life if I could. She is someone who made sure that the moment you walk in our door, you feel safe. And the minute that
Love
you
that.
call one of our people, you feel safe. So we've tried to establish that. So no matter where you are and like what you're doing, you have someone here rooting for you. And it's basically all of us.
Oh, I love that. Well, I'm going to make sure that I have all the spelling right, and I'll put it on the show notes, because
Awesome.
I wish you were in California.
I know, I know, I know.
That
Eventually, I
sounds
hope to
beautiful.
be licensed in many more states, but as of right now, I'm very happy in my little niche and I'm very happy
Yes.
in my little learning. So,
But
yeah,
you're setting yourself to be global,
global. Ooh,
nationwide. I love it.
uh,
Well, thank you again for spending this time with me. I really appreciate it. And
of
I'm really
course.
excited to see all the content that's coming. And
Thank you.
hopefully we can reconnect again and you can
Oh, yeah.
share more life updates.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Bree, thank you so much for joining us today and for sharing your wisdom and your heart. If you'd like to connect with Bree, you can find her TikTok and below in the show notes, and also through her practice at Trauma Therapy Company. I'll have all her links in the show notes so you can find her easily. And if you loved today's conversation, don't forget to follow the NeuroSpicy MomPod, leave a review, and if you feel called, please go subscribe on the Patreon for bonus content and video episodes. Until next time, stay sparkly, stay spicy, and take care of your beautiful nervous systems. Ta-ta!